We have here Vice Chairman of World Bank. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
In the changing global context and the strong demand for reform in global financial architecture, how can we address the climate justice that LDCs have advocated recently?
Well, I think first of all we need to recognize that the problem of climate change is affecting all countries, but some countries like Nepal have contributed very little to climate change. So the call for climate justice is understandable. At the same time, as you mentioned, the changing global context, we are actually seeing the amounts of money allocated to overseas development assistance in the form of grants diminishing. And so I think we also need to be realistic that there is no big sums of money for climate justice at the moment available. So we need to help countries adapt using their own resources and complementing them with the resources available internationally.
How is World Bank changing, and what can countries like Nepal expect?
So we are going through what we call an evolution process. We're trying to become faster, we're trying to achieve impact at scale, and we're trying to become more efficient. I think we've made significant progress along this journey. It's not yet complete, but I think what you can expect in Nepal is that we're going to be more focused. We're not going to try and do everything because our resources are also limited. We're going to be focused on jobs and on resilience, and we're going to try and implement better, more effectively. I think that's what you can expect from us.
So generally, access to fund is lengthy and complex process. How can it simplify?
Actually, it's not that lengthy. We've already cut our preparation time from 19 months to 16 months, and that's the average globally. And I think we're going to go further down. We're really trying to make it as easy as possible for countries to access our funds. But I think I should also say that it's not just accessing funds, it's using them effectively that leads to development outcomes. And there, I think in Nepal, given that the country only executes a small amount of its own capital budget and our own projects take a long time to implement, that's an area where we need to make more progress.
Seeds and LDCs ask for more funds in grant, but World Bank is focusing on loans. How World Bank is taking this issue?
Well, the money that we provide to Nepal comes at highly concessional terms. Actually, you can convert the loans that the IDA provides to Nepal into a loan element and a grant element. And you will find that more than 50% of the resources are actually grant element. So I think it's fairly advantageous. But I think the most important thing for Nepal to notice is that the Nepalis abroad are probably the biggest source of foreign exchange revenue and of wealth for Nepal. And making use of those resources could be a real driver for development. And so we want to try and see whether we can help Nepal use its own resources and use our resources to catalyze that. So we put a lot of emphasis now in our program on catalyzing investment and the creation of jobs for Nepalis in Nepal through our funding.
What are the major activities World Bank is doing in the context of climate change?
As I mentioned, we're focused on adaptation in countries like Nepal. We want to make sure that people have access to the information, have access to the financing, and have access to the infrastructure that allows them to adjust. But we're also working on mitigation. So Nepal, for example, has a very successful forestry program. There are possibilities for selling carbon credits from reforestation activities in the international carbon market. We're exploring with Nepal how to do that. Nepal has big hydropower resources. That also saves, could provide renewable energy and avoid carbon emissions. Can we find a way to raise climate finance to do that? So we're also exploring that aspect. But our main focus in Nepal is on the adaptation activities because that's the priority for Nepal. Nepal is affected by climate change. We know that. And I think the biggest challenge for Nepal is how to adapt to a changing climate. Given that you cannot do very much about it, how can you get yourself prepared? And there's a number of things that we can do. First of all, I think we need to look at how do we help people and firms, households and businesses be better prepared. A big part of that is better information, knowing when a weather disaster is likely to hit, or whether you're building in a flood zone. This is a question of information. Secondly, access to credit or access to social assistance, so that when you need to adapt, you have access to the resources to make the change. And what we find is that when households and firms are well informed and they have the resources, they actually take measures themselves to protect themselves. And the third is we need to build more resilient infrastructure. So when you live in a remote village and you're hit by a landslide, it really matters whether you have access to a road that still allows you to reach the nearest hospital. So we need to get better at building resilient infrastructure. We need to make sure that the schools and the hospitals are earthquake-proof and don't collapse if there is another earthquake. So those are things that we're working on.
Thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.